This is ATV.
Programs normally scheduled at this time will not be seen, in order that we may bring you this CTV News special report.
Hello from Halifax, and welcome to the parade of tall ships in Halifax Harbor. I'm Del Archer.
And I'm Liz Grogan.
This afternoon, we've got 2 hours of the most incredible entertainment for you. We have got a parade of vessels that of the kinds that very few people get to see, and if I don't settle down here, Liz, I'm going to wear myself out before the afternoon is over with.
It's been a really exciting time. What we're going to see today over the next 2 hours are some of the most spectacular tall ships in the world. 50 of them in total from 14 different countries. We're going to show you what life was like on board. We had a chance to go on board many of these ships. And we're also going to show you how they lived it up on land.
And on board. We had an opportunity of going on some of those vessels. We're going to be talking to some of the people. We're going to be talking to Don Barr of the Bluenose. We've got a gorgeous day here. It's 26 degrees Celsius. The winds are about, what did I say, Jim, around 8 knots, something like that. And that may present a problem. That may present a problem with some of the bigger vessels, because if they put on too much sail, if they bend on too much sail, they may go by us just like that, and that could be a problem. Now, the Bluenose is coming up here behind me. Don Barr is on board. We're going to wait until we know for certain that we have microphone contact with him, and then we're going to put some of those questions to him.
But I think it's very fitting that the Bluenose should lead the parade, being Nova Scotia's ambassador. And we'll mention that she did not race. But having talked to many of the people in the crowd, even though we are going to see some of the most spectacular ships in the world, there is still that from the heart. She doesn't compare to the Bluenose.
There's also something interesting. A lot of them would love to have seen the Bluenose race. They think that she could have beaten it. But a long time ago, when the Nova Scotia government took over the Bluenose operation, they made an agreement with the Olin family that she would never be raced, because they saw it as a possibility that somehow Bluenose 1's reputation would be smirched, and they don't ever want that to happen.
So she was really built for show and not for speed.
Absolutely.
Although she did sail over to Bermuda and back again.
She did. Oh, yes, of course. You were there.
I was there.
Did you have a good time?
I had an opportunity to sail on her there, which I haven't had a chance before here in Halifax.
The Bluenose is directly behind us. Have we heard? Can we find out if the microphone contact has been made with Don Barr at this point? We'd like to have a chat with him if it's at all possible.
Look at those fellas up there on the yards. Boy, what a view they must have.
Can you imagine yourself going up there? Did you try that, by the way, on any time during the week? Oh, those are the CF5s. Fantastic. A salute to those lads. Those are the CF5s from Bagotville, Quebec. They're called the Bluenose Squadron, and they got that name back in the Second World War when they were commissioned in Europe, and they took that name. Today is their 40th birthday. 40th birthday. Any word from Don Barr yet? Love to be able to talk to him.
Oh, the crowd loves her. Listen to those cheers.
She's a direct and accurate replica of the dime that of the Bluenose image that you'll see on the back of every Canadian dime. Fantastic. I have had the pleasure of being on the Bluenose.
We're going to try and reach Captain Don Barr. Hello, Captain Barr. Can you hear us?
Can you hear us, Don? You're waving there?
Don't leave the wheel, but talk to us.
We can just barely hear you. Don, would you like to have raced the Bluenose from Bermuda to Halifax?
We were the first ship back to Halifax, so that was good enough for us, over.
You didn't have to do it on an official basis, eh?
Official or unofficial, we're usually always first in.
Don, you have to be pretty happy about the grant that you received yesterday from Petro-Canada and the promotion that's going to mean for the Bluenose to keep her in shape for years to come.
We're very pleased about that, because we know...
There goes the Bluenose of the air with the Bluenose of the sea.
Bluenose on... I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to ask Don Barr what he thinks of the wind conditions conditions and what we can expect from the other tall ships. Will they have all their sails up today?
The wind conditions are very good, and it looks like the other big ships are going to be setting their sails. Most of them appear to be ready to go.
Fantastic. Don, you're probably going to be out of our range in a few moments. It was nice to talk to you. The lady looks gorgeous.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I don't know how they're going to top this one. This one is quite an experience. She's off to Quebec, and she'll be there for the sailpast in Quebec as well.
In fact, there's a bit of a history to the sailpast, isn't there? Do we want to get into that now, or should we wait for a little? We'll wait for a little bit.
Historian to explain it.
History of the race? Well, we'll tell you, Liz is getting her information on the history of the race. I'm going to tell you that before this afternoon is over, you're going to be seeing all kinds of ships. You're going to be seeing barks, you're going to be seeing barkentines, brigs, brigantines, full-rig ships, schooners, sloops, yachts, yawls. I've got a language all my own that I've just discovered this week.
But the reason for it is because of the Sail Training Association, which is an organization that has brought together these ships of young people. These are young people who are not professional sailors, they're amateur sailors. And it's probably the most ambitious program that they've ever put together before. And we have some footage to show you just exactly where they started from. The purpose is to commemorate Jacques Cartier's 450th trip to Canada. I understand he made a wrong turn and ended up in Quebec.
That was 450 years ago.
They started in St. Malo, went to the Canary Islands to replenish their supplies, and then they sailed to Bermuda. Another group from South America sailed from Puerto Rico, joined them in Bermuda. They left June 2nd and arrived in Halifax on June the 8th last Saturday, and they've been celebrating ever since.
And that they had a reception. The city of Halifax tells me that they have never seen such a turnout of people. They come from all over Canada. They come from the United States. They come from some from Europe. They've had a feast. There has been more pictures taken. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that one of the captains that I talked to said, you know, it's a good thing we're going back to sea because ships get rusty at shore and so do the crew, and we've got to get them back on board for some ship's discipline.
Some of the expressions you're going to be hearing this afternoon from us and from our lineup of very distinguished guests. We have among them Silver Donald Cameron, who is an author. We've got Russ Lownds, who is probably one of the most... I'm sorry, lost my place there.
Russ Lownds from the Maritime Museum?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Russ Lownds from the Maritime Museum?
Yes, Russ Lownds.
But wait, coming up behind us, I don't know if we can pick her up, but that is the Simón Bolívar.
The Simón Bolívar?
She has a captain who is the most
You visited, didn't you?
effervescent captain. I spent a day on this boat, and talk about Latin flavor. They are the most exciting crew here. And I think it's like crew like captain.
Really?
We have a clip of her where we'll be able to see. You can see what I mean by the most spectacular and exciting crew. They did this in Bermuda as well. Oh, didn't hit us. See all those fellas on top of the yards? It takes them, they should be able to do that in 2 minutes, but it takes a lot of practice.
That's a salute.
They can.
What you're hearing, by the way, is a salute from the destroyer, the Assiniboine, which is the official flagship. CTV's coverage of the parade of tall ships will return in a moment.
Nova Scotia's Annapolis Valley. It's the good country life. It's apple orchards and strawberries, country lanes and country ways, the majestic splendor of Cape Blomidon, the world's highest tides in the Bay of Fundy. Share a love affair with history at Annapolis Royal and Port Royal, Canada's birthplace. Enjoy the old-fashioned hospitality of Nova Scotia's Annapolis Valley.
The Chrysler Maritime men invite you to compare Tempo and Topaz versus our K cars. Who is the most seating? Dodge Aries and Plymouth Reliant have seating for 6. The best protection plan? K cars again with a 5-year or 80,000-kilometer warranty. That's 3 years more protection than Ford gives you. And who has proven performance and quality?
Aries and Reliant are Canada's best-selling compacts. You can't beat them. When you add it all up, you'll find Dodge Aries and Plymouth Reliant are the cars for you. And only the Maritime men from Chrysler have them.
RE/MAX sells more homes per agent than most real estate companies because they're all full-time professionals. When you list with RE/MAX, you can be assured of the right real estate agent and the right home buyer. RE/MAX, we're changing the way you feel about real estate people.
Up on the crowd. for special memories. Shared moments preserved in time. Joyous occasions. The professionals at Maritime Color Labs are concerned with the clarity and color of your photographs. They print on Kodak paper for the good look. So take your first step towards quality. Have your film developed by Maritime Color Labs at these locations. And now, share your prints with loved ones. Order an extra set for as little as $1.
The real stars of this show you're seeing right now. Ships like the Simon. Oh, they just broke out a pirate flag specifically for you, Liz.
This is the Simón Bolívar. She's a naval training ship from Venezuela. And as we said, she is one of the most spectacular groups here, the most effervescent crowd.
Life aboard the Simón Bolívar is not necessarily more swinging than on other vessels, but on a South American ship can make you what you expect, you get.
Life on board the Simón Bolívar is military with a Latin flair. Off duty is time for fun and study. But don't expect a cure for everything from this ship's doctor. If you feel seasick, what do you take?
I go ashore.
You go ashore. The 18 women cadets live in separate quarters. No co-ed life at sea here. Is that right? Make an honorary cadet? But they sure know how to live it up. They make a good Venezuelan? Yes. And there she goes, the Simón Bolívar, one of the few ships that has women cadets on board. Of course, that's changing over the years. Next year, I understand the Columbia, the boat
What a
will be soon
magnificent
coming up.
display. Are we still looking at it? No, we're looking at us right now. That is a ship and a half, that one. And it's from Venezuela, by the way.
She's beautiful down below as well. You know, there's lots of teak. She's almost like a cruise ship. They're very comfortable. They're certainly not rugged like they were.
We should explain that the thunderous cannon fire from behind us is from the salute ship, which carries all of the Sail Training Association folks. And it's a 21-gun salute to the parade of tall ships that you're seeing in Halifax Harbor this glorious afternoon. We're going to be seeing and talking to people like, as we mentioned earlier, Russ Lownds and Silver Donald Cameron, and we've got an artist here who has done a representation. We've got tugboats going by, military tugboats.
The tugboats are there just in case any of the ships run into trouble. They'll be able to get them back on track. Here's Russ Lownds now.
Just before we go to Russ, I want to make mention of the fact, did you know that in the Middle Ages, the captain of a ship was probably a passenger who had been elected by the other passengers only because he had probably made one other sea voyage?
It's probably because he was afraid of a mutiny. No one wanted to be captain.
Either that or he had the only American Express card on board.
Maybe we should ask the expert.
Russ Lownds is, well, why don't you introduce Russ Lownds for us? He's with the museum, the Maritime Museum down here. Author, broadcaster, columnist, what else are you?
I think that covers a multitude of sins, if we let it go at that.
Russ, this is a spectacular sight for these folks down here. And I suppose even for people like you who have been around this for so many years.
This brings back memories of the age of sail, when you had the wind ships, schooner, clipper, and square-rigged, and they spread white wings over the oceans of the world. And Halifax has seen all the white wings you'd care to name, and the harbor is the heart of Halifax. She's seen the wooden walls of Britain, the privateers, the blockade runners from the south in the American Civil War, and all the modern leviathans of the Navy and merchant Navy. Now, for example, the seawall here, which is down to our front, that's 2,007 feet in length. That could handle the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth, the old Canadas, no problem at all. And we've seen them all come in here.
There's an expression called windjammer.
Windjammer, that applied to the big old-time sailing vessels you'd call the Kruzenshtern. the Russian one here now. She was a former German, a flying P-line, F. Leiss of Hamburg, and she was named the Padua. And Leiss ran from Hamburg to Chilean nitrate ports, and he cut the time from 100 days to 80 days. He'd have the vessel sailing in the harbor with all the gear being uncovered, hatches opened, anchors run out. They have the lighters right there. What would take weeks and months, Leiss would have them out in days, and as they left the harbor, the last lighter would be alongside unloading cargo. They'd let her cast her off, and away she goes.
The sea is just an incredible source.
You can only scratch the surface here. If you live to be a million, there's so many sea stories, you'd be right out of your mind.
Look at her mouth. It's wide open here.
I certainly love the sea. When you were talking about these ships, we're here to see tall ships. Now, I understand, though, that the real definition of a tall ship has nothing to do with the height of her. It has to do with the length. Perhaps you could explain that.
There's a tall ship, really, you might say, it originated with the poem Sea Fever, as written by the poet of the sea, John Masefield. But there was a great discussion in the Sea Breezes, which is a noted British publication of the sea, and a lot of the old-timers want no part of the expression and have said so. And there was a letter even in the local paper here 2 days ago.
Is this a 20th century expression then?
Could be. No one knows exactly where it stemmed from, but people put it down to sea fever. I don't think that's very fair to Masefield, but a lot of the old-timers claim they never heard of it. A windjammer was a windjammer, a bark was a bark.
Look at those cannons.
The boys are sounding off out there, yeah. As long as they turn them the other way, it's okay.
You get a little nervous about it,
no,
too, do you?
I haven't got my steel helmet with me, you know.
Now, is it traditional for ships to shoot off their cannons in a sail past?
Yes, and yesterday at the captain's meeting, it was asked the number of ships who would be firing salutes, and about 10 or 12 put up hands, and the fellow in charge of the meeting said how many. Some ships said 1, some said 2, others said maybe 3. And during the days here, the Pride of Baltimore, she's been firing off her guns here for the last 2 days, just while moored alongside.
Russ, you've been here for a long time now. Have you ever seen this community come alive as it has for this demonstration?
It's brought people down who don't know one end of a ship from another.
You can be a landlubber, hey?
Yeah, well, I worked on the old Acadia. I still do. And there was a lady came aboard last year, and she said, "Is this thing afloat?" We said, "Yes, madam." She said, "It is not." We said, "How so?" She said, "It's not going up and down." It was a flat calm. We all left. Then the other day, the museum got a phone call, and I was taking a tour through the ship, and my boss came down. He said, "Russ," he said, "I've got a real one for you." He said, "We've had a phone call. Did the survivors of the Titanic get refunds on their tickets?" The old museum was just rocking.
Sorry, we've got to break away to a commercial, but we'll be right back to hear more of your stories.
Don't you go away. CTV's coverage of the parade of tall ships in Halifax Harbor will continue in just a moment.
Papers.
Everything's in order. Enjoy your trip. Why did you let them go? Guess there's something about the man I like.
Sail, a quality line of Dutch tobaccos.
Nova Scotia's Cape Breton Island, an entirely new adventure. Explore the magnificent highlands round the breathtaking Cabot Trail. Enter a different world at the remarkable fortress of Louisburg. Sail the Bredor Lakes, beloved by Alexander Graham Bell. Let the wonder of it win your heart. A Highland glen, a secluded cove. Discover Cape Breton, an unforgettable seaside adventure.
My Maritime men from Chrysler have made a special purchase of Dodge Omnis and Plymouth Horizons. Maritime specials at special Maritime prices, loaded with the features you want. 3 automatic transmission, 2.2K car engine, and $600 worth of extras at no extra cost. And Chrysler backs them for 5 years or 80,000 kilometers. We've got these Maritime specials in our showrooms right now, so come in and get your special Omni or Horizon from My Maritime men. Better built, better backed, better value.
Your special memories. Shared moments preserved in time. Joyous occasions. The professionals at Maritime Color Labs are concerned with the clarity and color of your photographs. They print on Kodak paper for the good look So take your first step towards quality. Have your film developed by Maritime Color Labs at these locations. And now, share your prints with loved ones. Order an extra set for as little as $1.
She's the oldest ship here. She's probably the least comfortable of
How
all
old
the
is
ships,
that?
having
How
been
old is
down
that vessel?
below.
She's 101 years old. She was built in 1883 in Portugal, and she was named the Gazela Primeiro, and when taken over by the Americans, they dropped the name Primeiro, but she's always held for 101 years the name Gazela.
And she's a wooden ship. There aren't too many of those around in the tall ships
I want to say
anymore.
that again.
She just changed her name too, Russ, and isn't that considered bad luck?
Some seamen, yes, but then the new owners take over, and sometimes they feel that a new broom sweeps clean. But the old superstitions persist in many of them. A lot of them don't like this change of name.
She's actually regarded with the same source of pride as the Bluenose is to Nova Scotia,
right.
to the Philadelphians.
Right. And put a lot of time and effort in her.
We went aboard the Gazela, as a matter of fact, Liz did, and while she looks very neat on the outside, there's got an awful lot of work to do below decks. However, we're told that the folks of Philadelphia feel about her as Haligonians feel about the Bluenose, and as Canadians feel about the Bluenose for all of that. You told me something a moment ago about being able to identify a Haligonian almost anywhere else in the world.
Well, if you see a fella from Halifax in particular walking along the main drag of any of our larger cities and he happens to be stooped over, you know that's from walking up all the hills in Halifax.
Up the Citadel to protection. We now have with us a special guest that we'd like to introduce to you this afternoon. And Chris Phelan, welcome aboard.
And Chris, welcome. Last time I saw you was when you got off the Donald Searle in Bermuda.
Oh, yes, indeed, after 4,500 miles. Very pleasant miles as well.
So you flew here instead of sailing. I guess you missed that.
I did indeed, yes. It was a change.
Tell us something about the background to the Sail Training Association.
So the Sail Training Association was formed in 1956 in order to bring together sail training vessels of the world in friendly competition using the medium of the sea. Our goal is to bring young people from all nationalities together on their various ships and to give them a spirit of competition at sea and to thereafterwards bring them together in port so that they can learn each other's culture, they can learn that they're all the same and hopefully provide peace and security for the future.
Chris, let me just interrupt for a moment. Just for the benefit of our viewers, we know who you are, but you want to tell us what your capacity is with the Sail Training Association, please?
Yes, indeed. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Sail Training Association and also the race director for this circuit.
You have to be awfully happy with what is going on here right now.
Very happy indeed. It's a very good parade of sail. The weather has turned right for you and it's a very, very good show indeed. Yes, excellent. And I think everything in Halifax has been tremendous. The organization, the hospitality, and all your crews are going away very happy with a very good feeling for Nova Scotia, and I'm sure that they'll be back.
Certainly one of the most representative ships that has taken part in the race has to be the U.S. Coast Guard cutter, the Eagle, which is directly behind you now. Tell us a little something about how they come to take part in an exhibition like this.
Well, we run international races every 2 years, which bring together not only the smaller ones, but obviously the big square riggers. And that includes, obviously, the United States Coast Guard cutter Eagle, with Captain Ernie Cummins in command. She's here with us this year. There's quite a fleet going up to Quebec. And she raced up from Bermuda, and a very interesting incident happened to her on the way up there. In the strong winds that sadly came across the fleet, she in fact was nearly knocked flat with her full sails up. So she came through that wind with a great deal of seamanship. She's a very, very fine ship and is sailed very well indeed.
You mentioned regretfully, and of course the regretfulness has to do with the sinking of a vessel during that very storm. We will be paying tribute later in the program to the Marquez and the 19 people who died in that incident.
But one thing we might mention here is that you do have an award, even though this is a friendly rivalry at sea. There is a prize for a ship at the end, but doesn't necessarily mean they won the race. Could you explain what the Cutty Sark Trophy is?
We have, well, as well as the Cutty Sark Trophy, the best prize is the Cutty Sark Trophy, which is given for that ship which does the most for international understanding and friendship. And it's voted by the captains of the fleet. It's not a committee decision. Each captain has one vote, and he decides which ship has done the most for the spirit in which we hope to bring everybody together. There are other prizes, of course. One of the unique things is that we handicap square riggers against fast racing machines, and that's a...
That must be impossible.
Well, it's bordering on that, but it's in fact it can be done, and it's done quite effectively. But you can win the race whilst you're still at sea. We have a time limit because the speed of the ships is so diverse. We have a time limit, and at the time limit, you can in fact be at sea, take your position, and win the race. Now, the overall winner on handicap from Bermuda to here was Corolla, and she won while she was at sea. So it's quite a unique system. Everybody wins, but it's not the winning, it's the participating that counts.
But that rule is a secret. You're not telling us what it is.
The rating rule is a secret, yes.
That's the Eagle that's saluting us right now.
Dale, you were on board the Eagle.
I was indeed. I just wanted to mention to... I wonder what she ate for breakfast this morning. Chris, the handicap rules are kept in a safe in England.
Correct.
I think I understand why.
Well, it's so that nobody can ever build a ship to try and beat the rule, because that's not the spirit of what we're in.
Of course not. Are you satisfied that the rules of the game are in fact not only being observed, but that there is growing and continuing interest in the tall ships concept?
Oh, indeed. Last year, which was not a major year, the major years are the even years, 1980, 1982, 1984. You've got a major event. But last year in Europe, in the minor year, we had 107 people taking part in a minor race. And so on a major year, we have a European fleet as well that's racing from Frederikshavn to Liverpool to meet the Canadian fleet on the way back. And it'll be about 80, 90 ships in Liverpool.
Has it been decided yet, excuse me for just a moment, Liz, has it been decided yet if your folks are going to be showing up in Vancouver in sufficient numbers in 1986?
No, that hasn't been decided yet. We don't know
Darn it, I was looking for a scoop.
We don't know the indications of where the ships are going.
No, I was going to ask you about the future because of the unfortunate sinking of the Marquise, whether that's had any effect on the future of the STA. And
no, that's the first fatality we've had in 28 years. Very unfortunate incident, an unpredicted line squall, which was not forecast and very localized.
Can I interrupt for just a moment, Chris? I think our viewers are seeing something that is truly unique here. This is the U.S. Coast Guard cutter, the Eagle, and a moment ago, her bow cut across, in at least the picture, the entire length of the Canadian warship, the Assiniboine, the destroyer, the Assiniboine, which is where, by the way, Chris Phelan just joined us. We brought him across the harbor there. And in fact, the STA folks are all over there. That's the official, saluting ship?
It's the official saluting ship. As the ships go past, they're saluting the Assiniboine with the Lieutenant Governor and the Premier on board, and Assiniboine is returning each of the salutes.
We did, in fact, I visited on the Eagle, and we may or may not get a chance to show you the results of that visit. But the thing about the Eagle is that everything is just spit and polish from stem to stern on that thing, and boy, do they work at it.
Yeah, she's a very, very good ambassador for the United States Coast Guard. It's a well-run ship. It's certainly very efficient. And I can assure you that the crew are proud of their ship as well.
Yes, there was no question about that at all.
Thank you very much, Captain Phelan. I know you want to get back on board the Assiniboine.
You're welcome, and thanks again to everybody of Nova Scotia that gave us such a marvelous reception.
You're welcome. We'll be right back with the Nova Scotia Parade of Sail after this.
We've just selected a RE/MAX agent to list our home for sale. We know that RE/MAX sells more homes per agent than most real estate companies.
She explained her complete advertising program, and I'm impressed.
She's a full-time executive with a great sales record.
Selling a home? Contact RE/MAX for the right real estate agent and the right home buyer. RE/MAX. We're changing the way you feel about real estate, people.
Papers. Everything's in order. Enjoy your trip. Why did you let them go? Guess there's something about the man I like.
Sail, a quality line of Dutch tobaccos.
Nova Scotia's eastern shore, an unspoiled outdoor paradise. Try your hand angling for salmon. Relax in the 19th century at Sherbrooke Village. Discover out-of-the-way places like Sober Island, Wine Harbor, Mushaboom, and Ekum-Seekum. Savor Nova Scotia's eastern shore and life the way it used to be.
Everyone is talking about quality. My maritime men from Chrysler are doing something about it. We put quality on the line with cars and trucks designed and built to give you the best warranty on the road. Twice as good as Ford, GM, or the imports. We take care of you in our showrooms with friendly courtesy and take care of the car or truck you buy with quality service. See my maritime men from Chrysler. We care about you with cars and trucks better built, better backed, better value.
Welcome back to the Parade of Sail, and what we're seeing now is a Zawisza Czarny. She was, of course, the rescue ship for the Marqués, and she won a special award for her participation in helping out at sea.
This is a vessel to whom a great many people owe a great deal for her courage, and they are acknowledging that right now. That is one of the Polish vessels. It is one of the vessels that was involved in the rescue at sea of the Marqués. There's a tradition about that too, isn't there, Russ? An SOS goes out, everybody is expected to respond who can reasonably do so.
Absolutely true.
Tell me about that.
Well, if I might digress, on the night of the Titanic's disaster, there were several ships. Wireless was still in its infancy, but on the message being broadcast from the Titanic, it was picked up by the Carpathia. The officers didn't believe the wireless operator, and he had to go and wake Captain Thomas Rostron and tell him. And Rostron then ordered the Carpathia brought a boat. She was only 58 miles away, and she went to the assistance and picked up the survivors of the Titanic.
Rescue at sea has got to be one of the most hazardous of undertakings that a human can involve himself in, isn't it?
There is no question whatever about that. And we've had several rescues around here. Many years ago, the Alania took off survivors from the Usworth.
The Oriole. By the way, the HMCS Oriole, I don't think that's what we're looking at. We're still looking at the Zawisza Czarny. But just passing us now is the Oriole, which is the Canadian military cadet training vessel. And
she's the only one that we have that is officially a
That's
Canadian
correct, yeah.
naval training vessel. She's built in 1921.
There we are. That's what we're looking at now, Liz. Great old girl. There's an awful lot of pride in Victoria in that vessel.
Yes, you want to believe it.
She had quite a trip coming out from Victoria.
That's a brand new mast.
She broke her mast and had to go into Seattle, and I would say she's probably sailed the furthest distance of all the ships coming here.
They told me something like 10,000 miles that they've covered just to be here today. The Oriole was just off Seattle. She left her home port of Victoria in March. I'm now working on the West Coast, and I was going to go over and do a little story on her.
Well, you should wait until August to do that story, Dale, because that's when they're allowing women on board. There haven't been any women yet. But in August, they're going to take on some Navy cadets.
Well, all right, Liz. I'll do it in August, just for you. We've talked about wooden ships and steel men. There are an awful lot of salty lingo expressions like that.
Well, in British North America, the sailing from Quebec, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia, many of the ships built in those provinces were sailed over to UK. Many were sold there. Many were sold for the wood that they were made of. Others took service in many of the big liner companies that are better known today in steam than they were in sail. But in the old days, you had the Marco Polo from St. John, beautiful. The W.D. Lawrence here from Maitland, tremendous, and tremendous skippers, tremendous crews. You have David Cook Rudder Churchill, both out of Yarmouth. Wow, what men they were. Captain Jonathan Borden Marsh from Economy. He went down and he broke a strike there in Montevideo, and he said, "Get the blazes out of my way." They wouldn't tow him up the river. He said, "I'll sail up." And he sailed up too, and he passed 3 steamers in doing it. And he wasn't kidding around, and they were glad to see the last of Captain Jonathan Borden. What a seaman. We'll never see his like again, boy.
Love it.
Tremendous.
Well, that's what they're here to see, things that they may never see again. And that's why I think we're going to go and try and find Heather Proudfoot, who is somewhere over in this crowd of thousands. Heather?
Yes, Liz, I'm down here on the museum wharf, and everybody's just having a super time. There's hundreds of people here, sun shining, sailing. This fellow behind me is from Sydney, Nova Scotia. He's down to have a preview of things he'll be seeing up in his city soon. How are you enjoying things, sir?
Oh, just great, just wonderful. Wonderful to see the old ships again.
Did you get to get on any of the vessels on the weekend?
Just the Acadia across the way here.
Okay, Liz and Del, I'll be keeping in touch with you and telling folks out there what's happening down here on the waterfront.
Thank you, Heather. We're picking up in the middle
Russ
here.
Lownds just
Lownds.
doesn't stop. I mean, listen, I've got a thing here. It says there is an assertion that the most dangerous work on a ship is performed on her decks, not in her rigging. I've tried going up in that rigging. I'll stay on her deck. I'll take my chances on the deck.
Well, something might just come down from the rigging. You might be glad you're up there.
Might be me. Yeah. Why is that so? That is a very strongly held belief.
Well, decks are studded with ring bolts, bollards, other things necessary in ship handling. The rigging can be very dangerous. In fact, I heard a discussion by 2 square riggermen, and one fellow said, "How do you sail?" He said, "How do you furl sail with safety belts?" He said, "I would figure that's very dangerous." And he said, "You clip." And he said, "What happens if you forget to clip?" He said, "You're down on deck." He said, "I'd rather do it without the safety belt," because he said, "I'll get a death grip with one hand." Because on a ship, it's always one hand for yourself, one hand for the ship.
What are we looking at here?
We're looking here at the Svanen. She is another training ship for the Royal Canadian Sea Cadets.
But she's not official. She's not in America. She's not in the military.
She's one of the privately owned ships. She's owned by the Havers, who bought her, I believe, in 1969. Up until that time, she carried grain in Scandinavia, and then they refitted her for a period of 10 years, and now she's used as a training ship. Russ, do you want to add anything to our Svanen?
Well, the last ships to carry grain were the 2 Germans, the Palmyra and the Passat, and they took the last grain cargoes down to Australia.
Again, part of the P line.
Yeah. The Flying P was very famous. Also, don't forget that the last big sailing ship line in the world was run by Gustav Eriksson of Mariehamn, Finland, and he fought right into modern times to keep his ships going, and then finally it was no longer economically feasible to do so.
Russ, they call her a barkentine. Now, what's that? How do you define a barkentine?
She looks like she's square rigged on the foremast, and she's fore and aft on the main and the mizzen.
So we don't have that many ships that are actually full square rigged here.
Well, it's broken down now to barks, barkentines, and that's really taken the place, to a certain extent, of the old windjammers, because it's no longer, even for display purposes, to build a windjammer.
CTV's coverage of the parade of tall ships will continue in just a moment.
RE/MAX sells more homes per agent than most real estate companies because they're all full-time professionals. When you list with RE/MAX, you can be assured of the right real estate agent and the right home buyer. RE/MAX, we're changing the way you feel about real estate people.
Above the crowd, RE/MAX Realtors, we're keen and proud, soaring above the crowd, above the crowd.
Papers. Everything's in order. Enjoy your trip. Why did you let them go?
Guess there's something about the man I like.
Sail, a quality line of Dutch tobaccos.
Nova Scotia Scotia's land bridge region. It's the land of Glooscap, man god of the Micmac Indians, and the 5 islands he raised from the sea. It's agate and amethyst, rock hounding in Parsboro, fossil cliffs at Joggins. It's the gallant history of Spring Hill, where you'll descend to the depths of a coal mine. Nova Scotia's land bridge region. It's a gateway to timeless beauty.
Your special memories. Shared moments preserved in time. Joyous occasions. The professionals at Maritime Color Labs are concerned with the clarity and color of your photographs. They print on Kodak paper for the good look. So take your first step towards quality. Have your film developed by Maritime Color Labs at these locations. And now, share your prints with loved ones. Order an extra set for as little as $1.
That was the Canada Maritime. She's from England, and she has one of the youngest skippers on board. He's only 25 years old, and he was first to cross the line in Bermuda, sailing from St. Malo. They're a pretty young and active crew. I think they've had quite a bit of fun.
Very noisy crew. Here, let me just bring your microphone up there a moment, Liz. There you go. You got to have a big head like me.
One thing we should remember about these tall ships, of course, if it wasn't for them, there wouldn't have been any colonization.
See you again.
And one of the most few voyages, I suppose, that's had such an impact was the Mayflower.
Yep.
Of course, that brought the Pilgrims to the New World in 1620, and with me is Charlie Church. And Charlie, you, I understand, sailed on a reenactment of the Mayflower's voyage. How'd you end up on her?
Well, they asked for volunteers from various parts of the countries, and they asked for volunteers from Canada as well, and make a long story short, I won it.
I think he's being modest. I understand there are about 5,000 applicants.
There were about 5,000 applicants from all over that applied, and the final selection was made by Alan Villiers, Captain Alan Villiers, the skipper of the Mayflower.
Charlie, I got to tell you what Liz said about the Mayflower. She said it was ugly. Was it ugly?
Well, it handled like a big fat duck.
Well, she has such a high raised deck. I mean, she's not as elegant as some of the ships that we've seen behind. And I'm amazed that she could sail. I would have thought she looks like a floating barge.
Well, you must remember that she was a Elizabethan design or style ship, or the ship of those days. And they tried to keep the officers and the people in command above and aloof of the decks, and we always had to look up to them, and they were up there in their small fortress, if you like.
Well, I understand that when they were considering rebuilding this ship, that people said it can't be done. Well, what were the problems in doing that?
Well, the problems in doing that was to find a person or a shipyard that was capable of that type of construction at the time, and also, as I recall, getting the materials. Now, ships of those days, they were built of materials that were grown in the forms that they were required. So they were in an ideal position, or locality, Brixham, England, in the Low Countries as they call them, where there was all this Devon oak. And this is the type of material that they built the earlier ships from.
So they tried to keep her an exact replica.
That's right, they did.
Tell me about your passage.
Liz, let me just interrupt for just a half a second. Charlie, excuse me for a moment. On our screen a moment ago, and I think still on our screen at this point, is the Dar Mlodziezy. And you've got... I knew I was going to do that, you know. Okay, you say it, and you tell them what it's all about.
This is the Dar Mlodziezy. She's the newest of the fleet. She's a Polish ship, and she's probably the only ship that's actually going to do the full sail from St. Malo, Bermuda, Halifax, Quebec, and then from Sydney to Liverpool. And I've had a chance to be on board her. We also had an ATV crew. One of the cameramen here today, who I'm sure is quite happy that he's back on land. He'd never been to sea before. And reporter Ian Morrison had a chance to go on board her.
Is she the largest?
She is the largest. She's 369 feet length overall, and that includes her bowsprit, which you can see over the bow, and whatever overhangs in the stern.
Now, there is some controversy about or at least not controversy. There's a difference in how that's measured, isn't
The
it?
American Sail Training Association measures boats with the bowsprit and with the overhanging boom. The Sail Training Association in England measures her just on deck. So for our purposes, we're going to stick with the American Sail Training Association.
Okay.
The Dar Mlodziezy, actually she won her class overall here on corrected time and on lapse time. She had 17 officers on board, 5 crew, and a permanent crew of 44, and 130 trainees. She's got 1,500 horsepower, and that means that she can do 12 knots. And when we saw her go across the start line in Bermuda on our little motorboat, we couldn't catch up to her.
You know, we've been talking now for almost 45 minutes about the tall ships, and we've had Chris Phelan on board, and we've talked to Russ. But you know what we haven't done yet is tipped our hat to the Nova Scotia government, which arranged all of this. And I think we should do that right now. This was set up and promoted by the Department of Tourism and its minister and the people in the Department of Tourism and John Buchanan, the Premier of the province. John, we salute you. It's one heck of a show, and there's an awful lot of folks around on these piers who would agree with not only me, but with each other, that it is probably the most magnificent show of this year.
It took about 6 years, I believe,
Yep.
to organize this.
They started in 1979.
And they've made all of the crew feel very welcome here. There's been gala events for, of course, the captains, and then for the crew, great beer and blue jeans parties.
They had a rock concert at the Metro Center that Liz and I went to, and they had one slow dance, and we danced the slow dance.
What was restricted, actually, to kids between 19 and 25, so we just snuck in there.
I had to remind myself, though, Liz, I got to admit it, all those gorgeous young women, and I had to keep reminding myself that I'm now a grandfather. I have to admit it. That's the salute from the Polish vessel to the STA folks on board the Assiniboine. Mark of respect. Look at the young sailors in the rat lines on that one.
Yeah, her captain is Captain Oleg Novitz, and I think I'll wave to Mark, who is her deckhand, who was responsible for helping to get our crew on board and of course helped us to take the pictures that we did.
Nice round of applause.
One thing we might mention is that when they're out to sea, climbing the yards to get up to the top of those masts is a volunteer position.
I would think it should be.
I'm sure there's lots who decided no thank you.
Charlie, did you enjoy that voyage?
Yes, I enjoyed it very much, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. When you say enjoy it, and you said it was volunteers to go aloft on our ship, it was get up there, Canada. We need you.
A lot of national pride involved there.
Yes, there was.
Just one thing when we're talking about the Mayflower, and before we go off the Dar Mlodziezy, she's going to reenact a part of history herself. She will be carrying bales of cotton when she sails from Sydney to Liverpool.
She'll be taking that over to England with her, as a matter
Yeah,
of fact.
celebrating the 200th anniversary of the first transport of cotton. It'll be a big celebration when she gets there.
CTV's coverage of the parade of tall ships in Halifax Harbor will continue after this. Coming back, please, I want to talk to Claude. And I want to...
Now that you've said it, I'll probably blow it.
Yep.
This shot?
I want that.
What are we talking about now?
This is Claude. Welcome back to Halifax Harbor and the parade of tall ships. And when we talk about old men of the sea, I don't mean that in any disrespectful sense, because I've got here one of the old salts in this area. Charlie, Claude Darrach, what am I saying? Claude, it's awfully nice for you to join us. You and I crossed paths a year ago down at Lunenburg when they took the Bluenose out after her refit.
Correct.
Tell me about, because you were an original member of the original Bluenose 1. You sailed on her.
Right.
What kind of a ship was she?
Beautiful. She sailed on several schooners, the old fishing schooners. She was one of the most and the better balanced boats and easier to sail and fastest that I ever sailed on.
Is the Bluenose 2, is the Bluenose 2 an honest son of Bluenose 1, or honest daughter of Bluenose 1?
Well, the Bluenose 2 is an awful good, the profile off at a distance, yes, is very much what when you see the profile and see the Bluenose off at a distance, you see pretty much what the original looked like. But as you understand, the lower below deck and on deck and all is a different arrangement, entirely different arrangement. The mast, the sail plan, and the hull, yes, pretty much the same.
Does it give you the same feeling when you're on her deck as it did on the Bluenose 1, the original Bluenose?
Not exactly.
No, eh? No. You remember the original.
It was a different atmosphere, a different operation.
How old were you at the time? 17,
I was 35 in 1938 when I was over when I was on the Delawana, the very first race. I guess I was about 18.
Yeah, that's what I thought I remember. Go ahead, Liz.
Claude, I wonder if you could just tell us, how did the Bluenose compare to the ship that we see here on your screen right now?
What ship are we looking at, I wonder?
No.
I believe that's the Gloria.
The Gloria?
Yeah. No comparison whatever in rig.
Oh, I'm wrong.
This
That's
is a much smaller boat.
Dar. No, I'm sorry. That's the Dar Mlodziezy.
Yeah.
The one who's just sailing by on her way to Quebec.
Yeah. Well, my answer would be to your question, not very much. No comparison whatever. That's this boat we're referring to here now?
Now, this is the Pride of Baltimore here.
Oh, this is the Pride. No, well, there's quite a difference. This is a schooner. Bluenose 2 is a schooner in class, but an entirely different sail plan and profile and everything.
Obviously, this would not be as fast as the Bluenose was.
They were fast, but I wouldn't say that was as fast as the
Would you like to have seen yourself the Bluenose 2 race from Bermuda, or are you satisfied that the Bluenose reputation should remain unsullied?
Well, I hate to make a hasty decision on that because there's a few questions should be asked first. And
what question should be asked first? Now, that's a good point.
Well, the question that I asked first, is it fear for the young generation to see something happen now under Bluenose name that would confuse them with the actual Bluenose International Fisherman's Race?
Okay,
which
what's
was
the
sailed
answer to
60
that?
years ago. My answer? No. I don't think, for that reason, I don't think it'd be wise to race it.
You would prefer to see her reputation, the reputation of the Bluenose, remain intact?
Well, let me say something I might be shot for.
Well, go ahead. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it here now.
I see no objection, have no objections to the Bluenose racing at all. But it's 60 years since the first of the international races series. But would it be possible, or make it more simpler, if they changed the Bluenose's name and let her go out and race and do whatever she wanted to do?
Now, there's a thought. Don Barr, where are you?
Right now we have coming up the... sorry.
You want an answer, that's my answer. Yeah.
Hold on for just a second. I got a couple more questions I want to ask you. Go ahead.
Right now we have the Colombian ship, the Gloria, and I think she is really one of the most beautiful ships that's
You
in the
were treated
parade
like
today.
a princess on that.
I tell you, being a woman in a city with 3,000 sailors, so any woman's
now the truth comes out.
I must say they were the most polite and not
Gallant.
chauvinist. Gallant, yes. Chivalrous. Not
They always are.
They were most courteous. You couldn't help but walk down a step and they would take your hand, you say goodbye, and they would kiss it. The unusual part about her ship, though, of course, is that she's really almost a floating museum. She has a whole history of pre-Columbian art on board that we had a chance to take a look at. I don't know whether we're going to be cutting away to that yet.
Yeah, well, we will if we get a chance. We'll just remind you. You take a good look at the Gloria, and you remember what Liz said about, first of all, the hospitality that we were shown aboard all ships down there.
She's one of the youngest ships. In fact, she's very much like the Simón Bolívar that we saw. They're both built in Spain.
I don't want anybody to misunderstand something. We are talking only about the big ships. You'll hear us talk specifically about the real ocean-going brigs and that sort of thing. We don't intend to slight the smaller vessels, but there is an ABC of sailing and class represented here, and we may have an opportunity to talk about that in a moment. I do want to go back, though, to Claude Darrach for just a moment. Let me ask you if, in your opinion, these sail training programs turn out the same kind of sailors for blue water sailing as they did in your day, when you had to work at it?
Yes. You've got to consider the type of ship that they're training on and what they're trained for. But however, yes, it's good. That's the place to go to get your training, because you're face to face with the weather elements, the sea elements, and the rig, the ropes, and the canvas, and whatever it may be.
And you're face to face with yourself too, aren't you?
This is right. If you're told to go aloft, well,
there you go.
There you go. If you take the wheel in bad weather, there's another side of it. So it's training, yes, it's valuable training. I wish we had a lot more of it in Canada.
What do you remember from when you were 17 and 18 and on the deck of the Bluenose and there's a storm and there's a race going on at the same time? Do you remember anything that stands out in your mind, Claude?
Well, there's a lot of things that stand out in your mind. And your question is, well, let us say racing in a heavy wind.
Okay.
What was on your mind was how good is all the gear aloft, the blocks and the ropes, and if one's coming down, is it going to come where you're standing? Or
self-preservation then, eh?
That sort of thing. Hopefully none comes down and you keep on going. That's one of the things that's on your mind. With Captain Angus or any of the Lunenburg skippers at the wheel, you didn't worry about it because they know what they were doing. And
don't go away, Claude. CTV's coverage of the parade of tall ships from Halifax will continue after these messages.
Nova Scotia's seaport cities, Halifax and Dartmouth. Climb Citadel Hill and join the countdown for the noon gun. View the harbor aboard the Dartmouth ferry. Feed the ducks at the public gardens. Explore the great shops, hotels, and restaurants. Dance and sing the night away. Each day brings new adventure in Halifax and Dartmouth. As cosmopolitan as Canada.
The Chrysler Maritime men invite you to compare Tempo and Topaz versus our K cars. Who is the most seating? Dodge Aries and Plymouth Reliant have seating for 6. The best protection plan? K cars again with a 5-year or 80,000 kilometer warranty. That's 3 years more protection than Ford gives you. And who has proven performance and quality?
Aries and Reliant are Canada's best-selling compacts. You can't beat them. When you add it all up, you'll find Dodge Aries and Plymouth Reliant are the cars for you. And only the Maritime men from Chrysler have them.
RE/MAX sells more homes per agent than most real estate companies because they're all full-time professionals. When you list with RE/MAX, you can be assured of the right real estate agent and the right home buyer. RE/MAX, we're changing the way you feel about real estate people.
Above the crowd, RE/MAX Realtors, we're keen and proud, flying above the cloud, above the crowd.
Your special memories. Shared moments preserved in time. Joyous occasions. The professionals at Maritime Color Labs are concerned with the clarity and color of your photographs. They print on Kodak paper for the good look. So take your first step towards quality. Have your film developed by Maritime Color Labs at these locations. And now, share your prints with loved ones. Order an extra set for as little as $1.
Welcome back to the Nova Scotia Parade of Sail.
It's having your back to those cannons. It's spooky.
You never know when those cannons are going off. They are a little frightening. This is really the most spectacular sight. I mean, I do feel as if I'm going back in time.
This is, well, speaking of going back in time, Claude, you were saying that you remember when some of these vessels came into this port and were still working.
Yes, the same type of vessels came with cargo. I watched them up until I was 15 years of age. They'd come to the harbor here and be towed in, assisted in with towboats. And then I'd come back. My father was a fishing skipper with a small schooner, Bluenose type schooner. And I'd come into port with him and see them berthed at the Wolves, at Farkers, Pickford and Blacks, and they'd be discharging cargo, taken on. Some with coal for canards. It was, it isn't the first time I've seen a ship.
Liz?
But they weren't painted white and they weren't all that clean. They were dependent on.
We'll talk about that in a moment. Liz has got something else here for a moment.
Those shots. Right now we have the Dasher on our board, and I guess she's appropriately named because she was the first to cross the line in the race from Bermuda to Halifax. She's also one of the smaller ships here. She's a Class C, which means that she's under 100 feet and probably has a waterline length of greater than 60 feet. She has a crew of 12, and she's a cutter. She doesn't look too unlike any of the ships that we might see on our lakes here.
And in fact, it seems to me that I recall somebody saying that a lot of, I think it was the harbor master, as a matter of fact, that made the comment that a lot of the vessels that we're looking at are just overgrown pleasure craft.
I think she wasn't even sure if she crossed the line. I believe there was some fog at the time.
I think that was the case, and in fact heard the bell, but didn't know until she was officially informed that she had arrived in Halifax.
What a way to win a race.
Oh, I'll tell you. Let's go back to, Charlie, when you were crossing on the Mayflower, you encountered some pretty heavy weather.
Yeah, we were lucky up to a point, but when we got this side of Bermuda, we hit that typical Bermuda weather change down there, and I gather I was about the only one on board who had gone through that area before, so the captain called me up to his cabin. He says, what sort of a mess are we going to get in here, Canada?
And what sort of a mess were you getting into?
So I said, well, believe what you see. I said, if you see any clouds, why, you're going to get a bit of a blow. So we saw some clouds and we got a bit of a blow. But on that boat, recall that she was a vintage ship of 365 or more years old in a type of construction, so we had to take all her sails off, and we hove her to for 24 hours.
Oh, a little sailing going on.
You said she did lock down a little bit.
Oh yes, we had a pretty rough time. We had to go aloft and pry loose some of the yards which had become jammed.
Did you go aloft?
Yes, I went aloft with a small crowbar. And
how high was that?
It was about 90 feet in the air.
How high would you think it is here on the Kruzenshtern that we see at the moment, the Russian vessel?
Oh, they're about roughly 280, 200 feet.
The Kruzenshtern, which we're looking at here now, is the biggest, or is it the biggest? No, it's not the biggest, is it?
Well, it's sort of a debate again.
Well, all right.
Whether you counter.
You and I have been doing this now for 2 days, and we still haven't agreed on it. Well, let's talk about the Kruzenshtern anyway. We do know that it's a German-built vessel. We do know that it was built in the 30s, in the 1930s.
Pre-war.
It was christened, as a matter of fact, by Hitler himself. We also know that after the war, it was towed away by the Soviet Union. She was called the Padua at one point, and good heavens. Excuse me, but I'm just watching somebody go sailing by here in a big hurry. I'm not quite sure who it was. She was originally called the Padua. If I'm being distracted, it's because of what you're seeing on your television screen there right now.
What we should mention here is that the wind is on the nose of these boats, so it's very hard for them to come about and to head straight back out. They have to tack their way up.
That's the Dasher that just went by there just now, doing a real snappy little turn for the benefit of our cameras.
Well, I tell you, I think she could give the America's Cup sailors a...
We were talking about the Kruzenshtern. Why don't you take over for a moment while I collect my thoughts? I got completely discombobulated there.
Well, the Kruzenshtern, she's a as we said, she is a Russian vessel. She's 342 feet length overall. That means that includes her bowsprit. She has a beam of 42.62 feet, and that's probably about the width that most of us would love to own a ship by. One of the things, when we were going on board her, I don't know whether we're going to get to see her, but of course all the questions that we asked had to be cleared by the captain. But as far as the whole purpose of the Sail Training Association races go, I think she epitomizes what it's all about. All the activities on shore really cross any political boundaries.
I knew this was going to happen. I'm going to stop you right now.
Why?
We've got a ton of paper, and I just lost the information.
Well, I think we remember that the Russians did mix with all of the other crew members. And they had a great time at the parties, and even if you couldn't speak Russian, the language of smiles and waves certainly carried on, or took over if you couldn't communicate with them.
Keep going. Keep talking. You're filling time now.
I think
I found the information. I found the information. You can relax.
She had about the longest lineups of all the ships that were here. There was a great fascination.
I guess we're finished talking, Charlie.
About
Claude, I'm sorry.
what a Russian ship would look like.
Don't go away, though.
Speaking of fascination, this is the Sagres II, which is probably the most recognizable ship here.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much, sir. Sorry.
She is, I believe she's from Portugal. And the sister ship to one of the other ships. Do you remember that, Del? What the Sagres is a sister ship to?
The Eagle.
She is?
Yep.
She's a three-masted bark. She's 267.7 feet. She has a cadet numbering 90. That's a pretty shot from shore.
200
She was
crew.
built in 1937 in Germany.
You, sir?
And she also is a ship that was not her original name. She was originally called, if I can pronounce this, which has been one of the problems we've had pronouncing all of these names, the Albert Leo Schlageter.
Albert
She was
Leo
bought by
Schlageter.
the United States in 1945. Then she was given to Brazil. She became the Guanabara. And then she was transferred to Portugal in 1961 and renamed the Sagres II.
Okay. I think we're organized here. I wanted to... we lost a couple of people in the process here.
Not overboard.
No. We lost Charlie and we lost Claude. We're trying to get on as many of our guests as possible. I'd like to say thank you very much to them for their contribution this afternoon. Fascinating stories, fascinating people. There's so many questions. I mean, with Claude, you could spend the whole afternoon. This man has got more stories. So does this man, Silver Donald Cameron. Talk about romance of the sea. I know. Nice to see you again, Don. Nice to see you. Listen, first of all, I got to ask you a quick question. How does a radical professor of the 60s all of a sudden become a folklorist of maritime lore, sea lore?
You're interested in the people, what they do, where they come from.
Schooner, Bluenose, and Bluenose 2. And there's been other books.
Yeah, there've been.
The romance of the sea has obviously captured Silver Donald Cameron.
Well, I always did have. I grew up on the West Coast and had small boats as a kid and so forth. And then there was a whole period when
He was born in Toronto, but don't hold that against him.
I deny it absolutely, but there's a record that says it was true, yeah.
Go ahead.
Right. So there was a whole period there when I just didn't seem like the thing you could do. I was, teaching at UNB and places like that, and kind of let it lapse. But one of the first things I did when I quit and became a full-time freelance writer was to buy a 33-foot schooner and start sailing around the Maritimes.
Don't you go away, because when we come back from this next commercial break, we got more to talk about. Okay? CTV's coverage of the parade of tall ships from Halifax Harbor will continue in a moment.
On the day Mrs. Bingham found out the boarding house roof leaked, she made another discovery about shake and bake.
Excuse me. Only one pan left. Oh, well, it'll have to do.
She discovered how to make a whole meal in one pan.
Looks good, Mrs. B.
Not only did it look good, it was good.
Beauty. And only one pan to wash. Up.
Shake and bake. Simple never tasted better.
Thanks for the autograph.
Most people recognize me as an actor, but for my most important role, when I'm myself, I carry these. Because bad breath can happen a number of times every day, so after eating, drinking, or smoking, I use Chlorets. Only Chlorets have chlorophyll and retsin to help relieve bad breath. They're more effective than just candy or mints, and that's good to know, because you never know when you're going to have to get tough with your breath.
comes a time when the special things in life are worth a lot to you. That's why you'll truly appreciate new Nescafe Colombia. Because Nescafe takes the richest Colombian beans and creates a taste that's superbly rich, yet refreshingly mild. New Nescafe Colombia Instant Coffee. Now Nescafe is a world of flavor.
We'll be spreading on the margin when they're done. We'll be spreading on the margin when they're done. We'll be spreading. Hey, you're not a margarine, what are you? Why, you taste just like parquet. We'll be spreading on the parquet. We'll be spreading on the parquet. We'll be spreading on the parquet when they're done.
Parquet margarine. The flavor says,
You know.
We're with Silver Donald Cameron, author, raconteur. I guess I better stop there.
Don't tell too much.
I want you to do something for me. Look over your shoulder at these vessels that we see behind us, and just go back in your memory to the ones that we've already seen, and tell me what it does to you inside your heart and your mind and your soul.
Well, obviously it's a thrilling sight, and what it does to me here particularly is I begin to think back on the period when this kind of thing was, if not common in this form, but when these kinds of ships regularly visited Halifax in the days of sail.
Were you born before your time?
I was born after my time, maybe.
Isn't that silly? That's what I meant to say. You knew. Good.
There's one back there, right? You can see the Roseway in the background with the kind of tan-colored sails. She's a schooner from Camden, Maine, and she left from this wharf under sail. Didn't turn the engine on, you know. Warped herself
that's the one that we saw.
Yeah, right. Now that, to me, that was a thrilling moment, because you don't often see somebody handle a big ship like that completely under sail. You know, they do that on the Bluenose.
And a lot of excitement. Yeah. There's a lot of excitement on board as well as on the wharf.
Oh yeah. Well, see, what's the wind going to do? Is it going to bap around one of these buildings and blow you, some direction you're not thinking of? You've got to be very quick and very sure of yourself and not make any mistakes. Right?
Is it that sort of thing that got you, that grabbed you, that made you become an expert on the sea, on the Bluenose and things like that?
It's certainly one of the things that got me sailing my own ship, and that was really the beginning of all of this interest. I sailed a little schooner that had effectively no engine, had an engine, but it never worked, right? And so I had to do a lot of that kind of thing, and your heart's in your mouth, right? I really feel for these guys. But I think that's a magnificent sight.
Liz?
I was just reminded that we neglected to introduce you, that you are the author of this book, The Schooner, the Bluenose 2. And, of course, it's Silver Donald Cameron. Where did you get the silver from?
Right there. There are thousands of Donald Camerons, eh?
Especially in the Maritimes.
Well, yes, but Toronto, Vancouver, same thing. It's a very
Speak nicely of Donald Camerons. Our boss is sitting back in Toronto.
Yes, he's one of the ones that made me decide I had to distinguish myself, right? And it's a good old maritime habit to give yourself a nickname.
You also got... You were busy pointing out something to me that I hadn't considered before. That is that Canada doesn't have its own tall ship.
Canada doesn't have a tall ship. And
but I would argue that. I would point to you the Bluenose, the Robertson II, the Oriole.
Robertson II, I don't know, but the Oriole is a yacht. It's not a tall ship in the sense that, look at this. That's a tall ship, right?
But she is allowed to participate.
Right. Oh yeah,
in the
but
tall
she's
ship
basically
race.
a yacht, right? She's a big yacht, but she's
not
yacht.
a Class A ship.
And the Bluenose too does not belong to the people of Canada. It belongs to the people of Nova Scotia, without whom Canada would be disgraced here today. We don't have a tall ship. We've got nothing to put in. And look at who's got the tall ships. Poland is practically bankrupt. It's got a dozen of them here today.
Do you think we can buy one?
We could possibly ask the Bank of Montreal to foreclose on one.
Are you involved in a project at this moment?
Yeah, I'm writing a book about a guy who wants to sail from Lunenburg to Bermuda in a barrel. I've been working on this for 10 years. Well, there was a fact. There was a guy who built such a barrel and wanted to do it. He didn't go in real life, but he's going to go in my book.
Why would anyone want to do that?
He doesn't know. He never did know. The original guy, he was. Somebody said it must be difficult to navigate, at sea, and he said, no, you could navigate a barrel to Bermuda, and it was like a little cloud on the horizon. He said it got bigger and bigger, and he began to think, could you? What kind of a barrel? How big would it be? How would you arrange it? And the next thing he knew, he was building one. Right?
Look at this. Look at these sailors. They are just having such a great time, and the folks on the wharves are just thrilled by it all?
I think it's going to do as much for Halifax as Expo did for Montreal, you know, in terms of the self-confidence and the feeling of importance.
Listen, did you have anything to do with with promoting this thing? Can we get you out on the West Coast to make sure that they're there for 1986?
I didn't have anything directly to do with promoting it, but I was well aware of it because, of course, the people that run the Bluenose were prominent in the arrangements of the sale.
Well, we got to get her over there too. I mean, she's on the dime. She's right across country.
Yes, that's right.
Or at least her predecessor was.
That's one of the things about the Bluenose. The province has never agreed to let her go any great distance.
Isn't that a thrilling sight?
It's not magnificent.
I believe that's the Kruzenshtern.
Yes, it is.
That's the Kruzenshtern, yeah.
There it is. What a gorgeous vessel.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's being shot against the city of Dartmouth in the background there. What a perfect setting. Well, aren't you lucky to be alive and out here with me today?
I'm lucky to be in Halifax and seeing all these vessels.
What a marvelous sight. It sounds redundant, but you've got to be here on the wharf with us, folks. You just cannot begin to appreciate. We hope you're getting some sense of it from our broadcast this afternoon. Donald, do you ever see yourself doing any honest work?
Well, no. I had a moment of financial panic last year when I contemplated getting a job, and I went and looked out, looked at a couple of possibilities, and was absolutely delighted when they fell through.
So that you can go back on the Bluenose, because that was the last time you and I crossed paths.
That's right. It's just been recommissioned.
Just recommissioned. Yeah. What was your feeling on that day? Because I've got to tell you a little story when you're finished.
Okay. Well, I was twitchy and excited because I knew I was going on that first cruise she was going on down to Atlantic City, but I also knew that I wasn't supposed to be going on that cruise. It was all very sort of hush-hush.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't quite sure what was coming up next in my life, and I didn't want to be too obtrusive and too obvious. I kind of kept out of your cameras, if you remember.
I noticed.
Right. But really excited about the possibility of going. And of course,
the fact that the vessel, that the Bluenose was not going to disappear, as there had been a possibility to that point.
Yeah.
Liz asked me a question not too very long ago when we were doing the research for this, and she says, "What does a guy from Dauphin, Manitoba know about sailing?" Well, I got to admit. All right,
That is a magnificent vessel.
All that applause is, of course, for the Sagres II, and she's got all her sails up except for that very top little bit. Now, what's that called?
With that little bit.
Oh, we've
the
stuck
Royal.
The Royal, all right.
Royal, I believe.
I didn't know if you were talking about a sail or the masthead or what.
That's magnificent. What happens is that they go by and they cheer and they salute the crowd, and the crowd applauds them back, and it's just incredible. Liz.
Now joining me over here is Niels Jannasch. Welcome. I understand that you've sailed on a boat very similar to the Kruzenshtern.
Very much the same ship. We were even a bit bigger.
You were a bit bigger. What were you on?
A four-masted bark called Passat. Passat, which means trade wind. Her name was Passat.
And where was this?
The ship was owned in Finland, and I sailed on her as a bosun, and we went from Wales to Australia around Cape Good Hope, and then we loaded our wheat and went back around Cape Horn to England.
And what were you doing on board?
I was a bosun on board, and the carpenter, bosun and carpenter.
For those of us that don't know all of these fancy nautical terms yet, how do you define a bosun?
Define a bosun? What you call it, chief petty officer. He's between the chief mate and the crew. You understand that?
Yes.
Okay.
I understand that. I have a small boat of my own, but I don't have to learn all of these nautical terms for it.
No, you wouldn't.
But I do have to figure out how to use all these lines, of course, that are on board. I understand that some ships, they have about 20 miles of line, if you added it all up.
Not quite, but you're just about. Just about. If you take every scrap of rope on the ship, yes.
This is the Roseway behind us. An American ship. Throw. They just said from the Coastguard to Canada, they're giving a hip hip hooray. Now tell me something about, have you also sailed around Cape Horn?
Oh yes. As I told you this. I told you
I
that.
thought that was Cape of Good Hope, sorry.
Well, to get to Australia, you have to sail around Cape Good Hope.
That's true. Good thing I wasn't navigating.
Quite right.
Now that's supposed to be one of the most treacherous places for
any vessel.
for any vessel, for anyone to sail around. We'll have to take a break right now. We'll be right back with the parade of sail, and then we'll find out what it's like to sail around the Cape.
There is no sun like the sun of Colombia. It shines on our land with special intensity and for just the right number of days to give our coffee a special richness. Here men such as Juan Valdez handpick their coffee with pride. There is no other coffee like the 100% Colombian. And when we put these words on the package, we are bringing you the richest coffee in the world.
In 1890, only J.M. Schneider knew all the good things that went into a Schneider's wiener. If he were around today, he'd list those good ingredients on the package, just like we do. How we use only beef and pork, how we season with only the finest spices, and how we smoke our wieners over beech and maple fires. So today, you know exactly what you're feeding yourself and your family. Schneider's wieners, you can still taste the difference quality makes. You can read it, too.
On the day Jesse's dog won a blue ribbon, the family celebrated with a barbecue. There were hot dogs and blueberry pie and lemon-fresh sunlight shining in the kitchen. Cheerful, hard-working, sensibly priced sunlight makes light work of dirty dishes, leaves them sparkling clean and bright, just like that. A little does a lot.
You know dietary fiber is important, and I know a great way to get it, the All-Bran way. Kellogg's All-Bran is an excellent source of dietary fiber with 7.9 grams per serving. I eat it every day, but not always from a bowl. I eat All-Bran muffins, put All-Bran in my burger, even sprinkle All-Bran on other cereals. The All-Bran way, an excellent way to get dietary fiber.
What you're looking at is just probably the best possible example that we can give you this afternoon of a variety of ships, a variety of sail sets, a variety, the kind of variety that is being provided. There goes an old T-33 being provided to the thousands and thousands of visitors here this afternoon, people who have come to watch this parade of tall ships in Halifax Harbor. And let's go back to Liz Grogan and her guest.
I'm with Niels Jannasch, who is the director of the Maritime Museum, and of course you were saying that you had sailed on a ship very similar to the Kruzenshtern.
That's right.
And you sailed around, you corrected my geography, around the Cape of Good Hope and Cape Horn. Tell me about going, I understand that Cape Horn is probably the most treacherous to go around.
It is, because the Cape Horn sticks out way down into the, between all the oceans, and in there it is in the west wind drift. Have you ever heard of the roaring 40s?
Yes.
40 degrees of latitude,
yes.
And they blow and blow and blow, and have a long fetch, and the seas grow tremendous.
And how was your trip around it?
Well, first of all, I must admit I went around the easy way, from west to east with the following winds. And the hard way was from east to west.
And thank God for the Panama Canal.
That's right, that's right. Takes all the romance out of it in hard work, right?
A lot of seasickness disappears too.
This was a trip from Australia to England. Took us 110 days.
110 days?
Yes.
Well, of course, when you're on a ship for that long, you have to work, and one of the jobs is, of course, working with line. You brought along a bag of tricks. What have you got here?
This is not a bag of tricks. It's a ditty bag to you.
Oh, a ditty bag.
I have a horrible problem here when you hear all those unnautical terms around here.
Now, just a minute. I am a sailor, a small sailor, of
All right,
course.
that's a ditty bag.
I'm willing to learn. That's
Good.
a ditty bag.
Yes.
Okay.
And when you climb up in the rigging, you take your tools with you, and because...
Where would you string that? From your waist?
From your waist or over your shoulder.
Over your shoulder, okay. What have you got in it?
What have you got in? All right. A heaving stick.
A who?
What's that for?
A heaving stick.
You know what it looks like? The arm off my grandmother's chair in the living room.
Is that right? Well, this is used for putting on sizings, wire sizings in the rigging. But that just gets too complicated. We
You
forget
mean to
about
hold up the mast?
it. Yes, and the shrouds, that's right.
And the shrouds, see?
Yeah.
All right, now don't
know a
go
little
away.
bit there.
We got another lesson coming up. I want to take a look. Oh, look at this, Liz. Niels, take a look. You want to see what the television viewers
Now
across the
that
country are
shows
seeing?
you the class A, B, and C of the fleet.
Absolutely.
There comes my old ship.
Which one?
Kruzenshtern.
The Kruzenshtern?
Not my old ship, but my ship was practically the same ship.
Isn't that a beautiful? Look at this shot.
Does that sort of give you a little touch of nostalgia now?
It does and it doesn't, because the Kruzenshtern has about, 250 people on board?
Yes.
And we were 32.
Now that would be tiring, especially, what kind of watches would you have taken?
We had two watches, one off and one 4, 5, 6 hours. We had one afternoon off and one morning off. But many a time you heard 3 whistles, that meant all hands on deck.
Let me just point out something, Liz, if I can, here right now. All of the pictures that you're seeing are coming from a battery of cameras. You may have heard the helicopter going over from time to time. We have a camera in the helicopter. We've got one over on George's Island. We've got one sitting over in Queen's Square in Dartmouth. We've got 3 down on the dock. We are bringing you pictures, the likes of which you're never going to see again, and I hope, oh boy, I wish it were possible for you to take some snapshots from your television screen at home. Suffice it to say, it's an exciting moment for us. Go ahead, Liz.
I'd like to get back to the ditty bag and see what else you've brought here.
Well, the ditty bag also shows, you see all that fancy work on here, squares in it and all this? That's what you did in your spare time.
Oh, doing knots.
Now there's sail needles.
That's a form of art in itself, isn't
That's
it?
right, yeah. And this is a fid.
A who?
A fid.
What is a fid?
A fid. If you have a big heavy rope, not this one you splice with your hands, but if you get a really heavy rope and you want to splice it, then you put that in there, right? Then you open it up and put your strand through it. And
Saves a lot on the fingernails, doesn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Splicing a rope is not easy.
Maybe not to you, but to me it is.
Well, lines are different, I'm sure, today than with what they were made of before. Now they're at a polypropylene.
That's right. There's a polypropylene sample I saw it in the harbor. It's nasty. It's not very good.
What would you use this for?
Give her a lesson in knot making.
Which polypropylene?
Oh, give me the real thing.
The real thing. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. This is not very seaman-like here.
I think Dell thinks he may get away with this, but I'm going to get him to try it too.
You have a boat, right?
Yes?
Well, you know, can you make
Small one.
Small one. Can you make a bowl in?
Well, I don't know. I always get it confused. I remember I was taught about something about running a rabbit around a tree.
That's right. That's right. Here, look.
Hold it up
hold it up so we can see here. No, we got to lift her up just a little higher. We'll get this camera's going to pick it up.
Okay. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, under.
And there she is. It's nasty rope.
Okay, I want to ask you, can you do that with one hand?
This one?
Yes.
No.
No?
Not I. Maybe you could.
No, I don't think so. Dal, you want to try that one?
No. No, I'm an interested spectator here, Liz.
You know, when I was on one of the boats that unfortunately isn't sailing here, the captain was one of the owners of the Marquise, and the rudder ran aground. But I did learn that there were left hand and right hand twisted lines, and I didn't know that.
Yes.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? You
What
see
did she just do? She did something there.
The strands go like this, right?
Yeah.
3 strands. They go like this, from left to right up. That's the right-handed leg. And if they go like that, it's the left-handed.
Okay, watch this. Yay!
Good for you.
You know what?
Good for you. Good
How
for
come
you.
I can never do it on my own boat?
Well, I don't know.
Okay, what else have you got there?
Well, it's not a murderous weapon. I made it myself out of yarra wood. And this is used to serve.
Well, you folks
We'll
are
come back to this in a minute.
Okay.
We're going to take a look at the ships.
I just wanted to point out that will give you some indication of the kind of crowds that we've got here this afternoon, Liz. That was a look at I believe, the folks over in the ferry terminal in Dartmouth. Just having a little trouble seeing my monitor here there. Look at those vessels.
To remind everyone, I guess, that the crew on board these ships are 50% trainees. They've had very little sailing experience. Of course, they've had a lot more now that they've had a chance to sail from San Juan or from Bermuda.
From the top of Queen's Square, a good look at some of the vessels that are taking part in the sail pass on this gorgeous afternoon in Halifax. Jannasch, Niels, you have to be pretty pleased with the way this has all turned out.
Marvelous. Absolutely marvelous. And you know what's best?
What?
The goodwill created. The goodwill all around. There's no hassle. I was or still am the chairman of the security committee of this whole thing. Absolutely no hassle whatsoever. And you know what? We should fire all the diplomats and politicians and let the world run by sailors.
I'm all for that.
And it would be all right. You should have seen the Americans and the Russians last night. Did they ever have a party?
And there were how many at this party?
Oh, I don't know, 3,000.
3,000.
And then the party went on afterwards, you know. And
the United Nations of the world, right here in Halifax Harbor.
Sailors, merchant sailors were always like that.
Isn't that amazing?
And you know another thing what impressed me?
We're listening.
Okay. When the first ship came in, the first big Polish ship.
The Dar Mlodziezy.
Yeah, just before she came in, a big Polish container ship went out of here. And I thought to myself, by Jove, there's a little country with 500 kilometers waterfront, has 12 ships here, has container ships and merchant ships, and where's Canada? 100 years ago, we had the fourth biggest merchant fleet in eastern Canada. Yeah. Fourth biggest fleet in the world. Now, we are down to number 42 or something.
You sound like you'd like to see a rebirth of...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, let me just go back to your security for a moment. Last night, a Halifax policeman of my acquaintance and a Harbor Board policeman of my acquaintance told me that in both cases, they had dealt with smaller crowds, with more problems than they've had all week here.
Yeah.
Niels?
The sailing ships do it.
Hang on for just a second, okay? CTV's coverage of the parade of tall ships will continue after these messages.
Look what they put in the shreddies.
Hey, raisins!
Look what they put in the shreddies now.
Raisins!
Now cereal lovers have a choice. The great whole wheat flavor of regular shreddies or shreddies and raisins with the added good taste of plump, moist raisins.
Look what they put in the shreddies.
Oh, raisins!
New shreddies and raisins and how Nabisco. My father gave me hands to fashion memories. We carved our visions free from branches that we cut from trees. My mother is my heart. She taught me how to see riddles in an aging book and how to feel in poetry. Hello, ancient eyes. Do you miss a smile? So many miles. Good to hear your voice again. Father, my closest friend. Mother, my dearest friend. It's so good to hear your voice again.
If you still think a woman can only use tampons some of the time, it's time you learned more about Tampax tampons. Because Tampax lets you choose as much or as little protection as you feel you need, with a complete range of tampon absorbencies. And Tampax lets you feel completely protected without actually feeling anything at all. Why shouldn't you feel that natural all the time? Tampax tampons, because complete protection should feel natural.
Ladies and gentlemen, you just can't believe the excitement that is being generated by the picture on your screen. That's the Kruzenshtern. Russ Lownds is back. Russ, tell me about this and tell me about the feeling that surrounds it.
The Kruzenshtern is a former German P-liner owned by F. Weiss of Hamburg in Germany, and she was originally named the Padua. All the flying